Hello, everybody, and welcome back to F1 TS Hub. This is episode 4 of the Late Night Talk Show, and we are going to be dissecting round 2 in Bahrain, which was Jono, who is alongside me once again. One of the most eventful, exciting races we've ever had at F1 TS Hub across all three of our tiers.
Without doubt, good races across the board, lots of overtakes, lots of battles, as we like to see. And I think Bahrain has well and truly cemented itself now as being one of the absolute best tracks for league racing on the F1 games.
It definitely is, and busy steward's office for you this week as well. So quite a few incidents to go through on there. Obviously, if you just remind the drivers that the steward's office, when it's open till, and that template that they need to use, otherwise their incidents, won't be looked at accordingly.
Yeah, anybody who wants to post an incident, they've got until midnight tonight to get the incident posted on the forum. The information about the format to use is on the top there as well, so you can't miss it. So put your details in the right format so we know what tier you're in and what lap the accident happened on and what have you. And then we can get it looked at and get the results out as usual at some point on Tuesday.
Awesome stuff. All right, Jono. So round 2 in Bahrain. Yourself and I have had an interesting battle there. I think in season 4 and I think again in season 6 or 8, I believe one of them we were pretty close together towards the finish, holding drivers off. It's a really track that encourages battling all the way through the entirety of its laps.
Yeah, it does. It just encourages close racing. You've also got pretty powerful DRS and then a big braking zone into turn one. And then, of course, you've got a good chance then of getting the position back if you do get overtaken into turn four, which is a wide open corner. So as we saw on Friday, you've got drivers trying to hold it around the outside around there. And then a couple even daring to go side by side through the S's section, turns 5 to 7 as well. So close battling there. And again, through the final sector as well into turn 11. There's just so many opportunities to overtake cars on the lap rather than just waiting for your one moment into turn one. A fair few corners you can send it and go for a move.
Yeah, and not just that, with the long straights and the two DRS zones, we were able to see drivers, even if they were quicker and able to complete an overtake, the guy that was perhaps maybe a few tenths slower was able to either get past or stay with him.
Yeah, switching quite powerful, and we saw drivers stronger in certain areas of the track as well. So you see drivers put away in the opening half of the lap, for example, and then get the gap closed back down. And it was also the first track I think we've seen of the season where energy management has been important. Australia wasn't so important, but here we saw several drivers, even a few laps in, running quite low on electrical energy and then struggling to keep pace down the straights.
Yeah, it was interesting to see different drivers, how they save their energy for different times to attack. Specifically, what I can remember is Julian and Blizzard in the Prestige race at 9 p.m. They were really running kind of different ERS modes, and Julian was able to keep launching attacks on the race leader at that time. But in terms of the track itself, turn 12, 13, I think it is, we were just discussing. The drivers really struggled with it. We saw so many DNFs there.
Yeah, turn 12. It's always been a little bit tricky on the games, but on this year's, it seems to be really, really difficult, especially on worn tyres. We saw some drivers just losing the rear end just from lack of grip and the car snapping back at them. And we saw others just clipping that deadly curb on the inside of turn 12, which just spins you out. I know we found that when we first ran Bahrain on this year's game. I was spinning it for fun on that turn 12 curb. So proved very, very tricky and very costly for some of the drivers as well.
Yeah, it definitely did. And another interesting thing was strategy. Lots of different 1 and 2 stops, and we often saw no safety cars, of course, but we often saw how in different tiers the 2-stop one or the 1-stop one. So it was really interesting to see how that worked out for them.
Yeah, there was two real viable strategy options. I think ultimately the one stop probably was the way to go, but it was pretty on the edge, and you only needed to neglect the tyres just a little bit in that opening stint, and it just forced you onto the two, and there was no way back from there. But some drivers were able to make two stop work pretty well, but I think ultimately if you can manage it, the one stop probably had the edge.
Yeah, definitely. But even on the one stop, there was different strategy involved. Those started some soft to mediums or supers to mediums. And as I said, different, either of those two won in different tiers. So, yeah, really interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Ferraris, didn't we, come through the field in the Prestige tier, starting on the soft. I think soft to medium was a great strategy, but obviously those in the top 10, a lot of them on the super soft, so that wasn't available to them. But the super soft proved pretty fragile, so I think drivers are pretty pleased to get off that and onto the harder compounds.
Yeah, they definitely were. All right, we're going to start looking at tier by tier. But first of all, can I just say, when everyone asked me last week, Jono, who I thought was going to win the podium tier, I did say Danestar. So I got that one right, and I also said Reflo was going to win the Pinnacle, so I got that one right. Unfortunately, I think I said Odems was going to win the Prestige tier, but he blew it on the last lap, literally. But yeah, I think I should get a round of applause for that.
Yeah, I think you did pretty well there. 2 out of 3 put me to shame, and yeah, I think we'll be looking at you with your crystal ball for the upcoming rounds.
Alrighty, so podium tier, Jono. Danestar, pole position. Army, much better improved qualifying. I don't think anyone was going to beat Danestar in qualifying in the podium tier this week.
Yeah, he was pretty dominant there, wasn't he? With a 4 tenths, I think it was, maybe 5 tenths gap to Urmi. But also great to see Urmi second round in, and he's already finding his feet at least on 1 lap pace and put it on the front row alongside him.
Yeah, it wasn't that it didn't make qualifying look that close, but it was close. Perhaps not as close in terms of times because of that, gap. But it was definitely an interesting qualifying session. Jamie sneaking inside the top 10 on those soft tires as well. We'll talk about his race as we come to it a bit later on. So let's skip to the start, and I'm sure that we saw a little pinch there as they headed down into turn one, which I believe was Gaza Rex and another driver. So let's get to the start, which is just 24 seconds, Jono. 24 and 10 seconds. The lights are going to go out, and Danestar just bolts away.
Yeah,
He
great
looked
start.
from the moment he got pole position. You had to feel no one was going to beat him.
Yeah, absolutely. His launch was just absolutely brilliant, wasn't it? Urmi just got left for dead there alongside him. Absolutely fantastic start.
And yeah, it's Gaza, Razor, and Rex in the McLaren literally pinch. They kind of make an arrow shape with their three cars on the exit. That's obviously what happens at a tight corner and too many cars trying to go for the same piece of track.
Yeah, just Constantine up into that tight corner, and then the drivers are already thinking about trying to get back onto a decent line for turn 2 as well. It's a tricky section of the track, and yeah, those guys came together.
Would you call that a racing incident?
I think so from what we can see there on the stream. I think it's just two cars going for the same bit of racetrack. I don't think it was reckless particularly by either. I think it just yeah, they just came together.
And Ermi finding himself without a front wing on lap 4. Obviously, he had such a good qualifying session, but as we talked about, that turn 12, you went straight into the barrier, and that's just, controlling the rear of the car. He just lost it.
Yeah, he did. I think he was struggling with the rear tire temperatures. I think that is something I think he admits himself he needs to work on a little bit, and he just cooked the rear tires and just had no grip at all, and just let go on him at that tricky corner on the power, and yeah, his race was unfortunately over all too soon for him.
And let's talk about obviously Jamie. He was on course for a good podium, but he was involved in a couple incidents. We know how raging he was afterwards. But two fourth place so far in the championship. It's going to happen, isn't it?
It certainly looks like it. He's got great pace in this tier, and he was on a good strategy as well. Obviously, as you mentioned, he was on the softs and inside the top 10. So to bring it home to fourth place despite those problems, I think it still bodes well for him, and he must know he's got good pace going forward.
Alrighty, Liam. Obviously, we're not sure. We think he disconnected or something. He kind of went into like a lag spike into the wall. What's he got to
Yeah, that
do
was
to
a
get
weird
some
one.
luck? Because he's obviously a championship contender with his pace, but he had the glitch where he got disqualified behind the safety car for pitting last week, and then this week a lag spike. How important is it for him over a long 21 race season just to keep his chin up?
Yeah, so all you can do is just got to hope that it changes next week. He's got good pace. He started third again here, so he's going to be battling for race wins, no doubt about it. He just needs the game and the game to behave, and for luck to turn his way a little bit. But he's just got to keep plugging there, and I'm sure the results and the luck will come to him.
Yeah, definitely will. Quite a few incidents from this tier in the steward's office, but there's none that particularly stand out over others. I think it's just Bahrain, giving drivers as we mentioned earlier, the chance to really battle each other. But Red Bull, first and fifth, again, they scored a decent haul of points here as well as Australia. You have to say that they're the favourites for the Constructors' Championships this season.
They're looking really strong. They've got both drivers who look like they're going to be scoring points more often than not. And yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for any of the teams to overhaul them at the moment. Obviously, early days, but brilliant start from Red Bull, and the rest are certainly chasing them already.
Alrighty, so let's skip to the results on this one. And we're able to see, by the way, Driver of the Day votes are live on Twitter. So if you want to vote for your Driver of the Day for this tier, head over to at F1TS Hub and you can do that there. Jonas coming all the way from 13th to 2nd. That's 2 podiums in a row for him. Starting on that harder compound, staying out of trouble, I believe, in both races. It's really working well for him.
Yeah, it is working well. Moved forward brilliantly from 13th to 2nd. To be absolutely delighted. And he was only 11 seconds back from the lead there at the end, so he had a really, really good race. That tyre strategy obviously working out really well for him again.
Yeah, obviously Nick pitted really early, did so many laps on that set of medium tyres, just held Jamie off for the podium. But Danestar, the only one on the podium to 2-stop. I think that was just the extra pace that he had meant that that strategy he was able to do, and it was obviously the winning strategy for him.
Yeah, he just had the pace in hand, didn't he? And obviously getting that start he did. He was able to just look after the tyres and run the race that he probably ran in practice. And yeah, he had the pace to make the 2-stop work. He didn't have to battle through traffic, and then worked out great for him.
It definitely did. Well, Podium Tier was another good race to commentate on. Looking forward to next week already. Let's head over to the Pinnacle race. Jono, you commentated on this one. A very close qualifying, a second covering the top 11.
Yeah, it's just amazingly close. There's just nothing in it. As you say, a second top 11. I mean, it's just the blink of an eye virtually. And plenty of positions changing again in the last couple of minutes of the session. You just did not know who was going to be where until the session came to a close.
And yeah, Pepsi Gamer joining him on the front row. Good qualifying for Lawrence, but obviously his race went really downhill. Lots of Brits in the top 10 I can see on the qualifying results. But let's skip to the start. And this race was really interesting because what happened with strategy was, ultimately what won Reflow the race. And there were times, where we were thinking, is he going to win this race? The Ferrari seemed to have better pace, particularly in the opening stint. But do you think he was just managing that super soft tyre to take it to where he needed to go?
Yeah, I think he might be. And we did mention at the time we thought maybe he was just managing, but it did look like he was struggling slightly against the Ferraris. But yeah, perhaps he knew he was on the one stop. He knew he had to look after those tyres. We know it's absolutely crucial, and we know he's got a good racing brain. So he may have been playing the long game, didn't want to battle the Ferraris too hard. But it was a really interesting strategic battle as the two strategies converged really in the final section of the race.
Yeah, obviously just watching the start, Lawrence going round, and that was kind of his afternoon went from bad to worse. But the two Ferraris, let's talk about them for a minute because they really put on a real challenge to Reflow. And I just read in the chat actually that Sam let Matt through across the line because it wasn't picked up on stream, and it was about at 1.3 seconds on the last lap, and I wondered how Matt got past. And the only thing I could think was either Sam made a mistake on the last corner or he got through. But the Ferraris, do you think they could have won that race had they worked a bit better, or do you think ultimately Reflow's strategy gifted him the win?
I think his strategy would have just about had enough to hold them off. Because although they were battling, I think they weren't really holding each other up too much from what we could see on the stream. They were getting DRS with each other as well. So they were gaining from that, and they weren't really sending too many risky moves on each other. So I think, Reflow probably just about had it covered either way. But they did put on a good show for us and left us guessing right up to the end.
Yeah, good clean racing as well from them, as you said, not costing each
Yeah.
other, you know, time, because Bahrain is a track where you can use a slipstream with the teammate to. I think we've done it a couple times, Jono, where we've because you can just sail straight past, not really hold the guy up too much, and then you almost get him back, return the favor the next lap.
Yeah, definitely. If there's lots of laps left in the race, there's just no point battling if you're working as a team to close somebody down. You can use DRS, as you say, sail by, and then just return the favour and repeat, and it can gain you a fair bit of time, lap after lap. Obviously, at the end, we all want to win, so final few laps, you can sort of unleash and go for it. But I think, yeah, it was a good strategy early on in the race, at least, to work together and use DRS.
All right, and talk to me. I'm on lap 6, 32 minutes and 45 seconds about Lukey, because this boy, I just said off stream, he must have finished the race and just been absolutely exhausted, because I don't think there was a lap where he wasn't either defending within DRS or within DRS of a driver. We know he had obviously a lot less drag because he was so much quicker on the straights and was holding the guys up. But drivers like SFR Chopper, they went past him and you just get him straight back again.
Yeah, he would. I think we literally could have just stuck the camera on Lukey from the lights out and just left it there till the end, and we'd have all been thoroughly entertained. Every time we looked at him, he was battling, he was defending so hard, but pretty much fair for most of it, at least from what we could see on the stream. But as you say, drivers would get by him, quicker on the corners, but that Renault was just lightning down the straights, and he was good on the brakes as well, especially into turn one. And he just kept getting that position back and defending to the inside line and making it as difficult as he possibly could for any driver to get through.
Just hearing on the chat, I don't know if you saw that, John. Reflow saying he had yellow wing for 15 laps. So that just shows you even more how impressive that win was for him in this tier.
Yeah, definitely. We know how much damage front wing can hurt you. So, yeah, even more ominous for the rest of the drivers, no doubt, to find out that he was driving with a damaged front wing for a lot of the race.
Alrighty, we saw a few drivers either spin it again at that turn 13, but also I believe it's turn 4 where it's slightly off camber, the corner. The curve's really like bumpy as well. It's quite like a mountain tip. It feels like if you go over it too much. A lot of the drivers getting on the power too early and spinning it to the inside barrier I saw as well.
Yeah, it's one of those tricky curves, as you say. If you clip it wrong, it can spin you round. And it's one thing attacking it in qualifying on fresh tires and low fuel, but when you're doing it in the race with the opposite, it can definitely be tricky. And knowing just how much you can attack corners like that is crucial to making no mistakes throughout the race.
So obviously onto the results, we can see Ferrari scored the second and third. And yeah, interesting to hear that Sam let Matt through. So I expect them to be both challenged for this championship with Reflow. But 2 wins out of 2 for one of our esports drivers. He didn't have it as easy that time around, but he's really putting a mark down on this championship.
He is. He's the one to catch, and it's difficult to bet against him, I guess, at the moment, as you proved with your thing last week of saying that he'd win again. Well, it's hard to bet against him for next week after this, I guess. But the Ferraris did run him close, and the Ferraris looked really equal in pace around here as well. So if they work together, I think they have got a good chance of challenging Reflow as we go forward.
Only 10 drivers finished this race, Jono. The rest crashing out. Speaking of which, good attendance for this race. 55 out of 60 drivers at F1 TS Hub attended on Friday. So that's fantastic to see for the league having so many. But yeah, looking forward to next week at China with back in the commentary box for these guys.
Definitely, it's another great track, and I'm sure we're going to see plenty of moves there as well. It was always a favourite of yours, I know, and always delivers good racing again. And weather can be a bit unpredictable there as well, so it'll be a good one, I'm sure.
Alrighty, prestige tier. You could. This is probably one of the most exciting races ever streamed on a Formula One game. I don't think you could script it any better. But yeah, top 10 on the super soft tire, as expected. Louis decided to qualify on those softs, which we know how quick he can be. But VSR Blizzard, what a lap! 25.2, and I think he had a 25.6 earlier on in the session, and they all took turns beating him, and then he just comes along and goes, have that.
Yeah, that's it. Everyone else so close behind him, and then he manages to pull that out the bag, absolutely stonking lap time. And yeah, in the end, nobody was able to get close really.
Yeah, it's amazing lap time. Odin's saying on the stream that he's in the top 15 in time trial, and that was quicker than his time trial lap. So yeah, where he's
Wow.
able to find that time is pretty amazing. But again, the grid very close. Top 9 separated by just 8 tenths of a second. The smallest margins around this track really are so important in this tier.
Yeah, it's just so close, isn't it? And as we say, there's so many tricky corners on the lap as well, and tricky braking zones that you just can't afford to not attack them all absolutely to the maximum. But of course, in doing that, pretty high chance of making an error. But yeah, these guys just showed us how it's done, didn't they? Once again,
Showed us why we're retired, Jono. But
absolutely.
if we head to the start, we can see top 10 we're on super soft tire, and then from 11th all the way to 19th we're on the soft tire. So it was clearly going to be a race of two races in a sense. But LMC Hamilton getting a jump start. We haven't often seen that too much, but just a bit trigger happy there.
Yeah, and so demoralising as well to get that immediately here on the back foot. And yeah, we don't see it very often, but it got him this time, unfortunately for him.
Our commentators, by the way, little did they know when they were about to start this race what they were going to be in for. But it was definitely a cracker. There's so many points in this race we can, pick as we head down into turn one. Blizzard obviously gets a good start, but is challenged immediately by Julian, and they continue to that challenge all the way until about the last 5 laps, where Julian got wing damage from an attempted overtake where he got pushed off. And also then VSR Blizzard, just to spoil it for you guys before we get there, spun it. I'm not sure if he did get a puncture or whether he's just spun it on his own, but it was at turn 13 again. Louis, obviously the only driver to have proper damage as well on the first lap. So it was for this tier, which is usually the tier that is involved in the most incidents. They were really clean through lap one.
Yeah, it was pretty clean. Just watching it back again now, and very little contact. But obviously, Lewis came off really badly. He was placed. He obviously thought that strategy was the one to go for. Obviously, taking the hit on the grid positions to get on the soft tire, but does put you in the middle of the pack, and that is what can happen.
Yeah, definitely. And then we saw MLA struggle in the opening stint, but we hear he had wing damage as well. So it just shows you, even at a track where there's so many straights, how important your wing is on a Formula One car. It's such a small part of it, but it obviously affects so much.
Yeah, it's just absolutely crucial. Obviously, yeah, there's a fair few straights, but there's also lots of corners. It's pretty medium to high speed corners as well on this track, especially again, as we were saying, turn 12 and whatnot. You just need the front wing, and it just hurts you as we saw with MLA just struggle for pace a little bit with that damage.
So we, as I mentioned, it was a race of two races. We saw the super soft guys all battle it out. Malloy got quite far ahead into it up to fourth position, but then he went backwards after a couple of incidents. So that's two races where he feels he probably could have got a better result. During the midpoint of the race, he would have put money on him and lost. VSR Josh, he was also up at the front, but after his pit stop, he must have had an incident because he dropped back.
Mm.
But the rest of the guys kind of battled it, and those on softs just continued to about the midpoint of the race and pitted. And obviously, we're on the fresher compound of the medium tires to the end, which is well, we say got interesting. The whole race was just it must have been so difficult for the commentators, John, to pick a battle. Like there was no way you could have covered it all.
Yeah, there's just so much to look at, weren't there? Obviously, they did focus quite a bit on the front too, and how could you not? They're battling for the race win, and they're going wheel to wheel more often than not. But there was plenty of battles further down the field as well. But you have to say, in the opening stint, the front two, Julian and Blizzard. I mean, you look at the caliber of driver behind them, but they managed to just build that gap. The pace they had was just amazing at that point in the race, and could not have predicted at that point that neither of them would be taking the victory at the end.
Yeah, definitely. Very strange VSR Blizzard. It'd be interesting to know if he actually had a puncture, if something just happened. Hello to we've got Chris on the stream. Obviously, our season 7 drivers champion. So big hello to you, Chris. And yeah, it was just an absolute overtaking and defending fest all the way through the race for these drivers. Even if they weren't battling for the higher end positions, they'd have to walk away from this one and say, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's what you want, battles throughout the field. We saw how close qualifying was, and it carried over into the race as well. And everybody had a battle in position to fight for. It doesn't matter if you're out the points at the time and in the moment, you're just going to give it your all, no matter who you're driving and against and what position you're fighting for on track.
Alrighty, so as the race developed, we saw these two Ferraris just climb through the field. They obviously pitted late on those soft tires that they started on and went onto the mediums. They had the fresher rubber, and they just seemed to just keep pumping in the lap times. I know they both had a bit of a more Noek had a tasty battle with Odems. A few times they were very aggressive with each other, but yeah, it was. You did see a lot of drivers from what I saw when I was watching give each other room. Those two seemed to try and obviously push each other to the limit of what is and isn't acceptable.
Yeah, they just about got away with it, didn't they? On another day, I think there could have been a little bit of damage done, and somebody ended up spinning or something. There was a few sort of on the edge, late breaker maneuvers and whatnot, but they just about got away with it, and it proved good to watch.
Alrighty, so as we head into the closing 4 laps of the race, I'm on lap 25, just watching Odems try and overtake Noak here. He's been a while on those medium tires, and on the last lap, I think it was, he got a puncture from 4th position. How disappointed do you think he'll be with that?
Yeah, he'll be gutted, but I think he did mention he just pushed the tyres too hard early on, forced them to pit probably a lap or two earlier than he wanted to, and yeah, it just makes the race so difficult from there. He obviously wanted to stick to his strategy, but the tyre didn't quite make it to the end, unfortunately. But pretty good drive from him other than that. But yeah, disappointing with the result, obviously, in the end.
And talk to me about this, Jono, because as I was rewatching this race, as you know, I didn't commentate. You had Jack and Alex. When they were riding on board with Julian and he was trying to overtake Blizzard, he tried the same thing 3 or 4 times into turn 1, all the way up into turn 4, and lost out every time. I know Blizzard did try and take the inside line, but as a driver, there's only so many moves you try the same before you have to think, I've got to find a way to try something else. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. He was trying to obviously use the high energy modes and to try and go for that move, and then try and carry the momentum up into turn 4 and hold it around the outside. But Blizzard was just always there on the inside, and he was just able to just hold him out to dry in that Esther section, and Julian had to back out, or he was going to get forced off track. So yeah, perhaps he could have tried something a little bit different, try and get the cut back out of turn 4, perhaps, rather than try and hold it around the outside to the S section. Maybe that would have been worth giving a try. But maybe at the time he just thought he could make that move work if he persevered.
Yeah, interesting between those two how they manage their errs. You saw Julian drop off a couple times to about 1.5 seconds and then just close right back in again. So he's obviously saving his errs and then mounting another attack. But yeah, amazing drivers. The caliber of those two, as you mentioned, really showing us exactly how to drive on a Formula One game. But yeah, there was that incident where Julian did get the wing damage towards the end, by the way, John. 35 people watching the stream where they wanted to see. And yeah, Blizzard spinning out on lap 26 out of 29. Was it a puncture? Was it not? The Ferrari of Noek coming round almost collected him. Blizzard went to spin round and just stopped himself. But how disappointed do you think he'll be, or do you think he'll be able to take the positives from what was a very high-paced Haas car?
To be
Sorry,
honest,
not
I think
Haas,
he'll be,
Sauber
yeah,
Alfa Romeo.
Cyber. I think he'll be pretty gutted, to be honest. I know I would. You can have all the pace in the world. Obviously, he's going to be battling for wins all season long, but he'll feel this is the one that got away from him. He was guaranteed a win or at least second place, and after a race on battle, to well, whatever happened, lose it how he did, he'll be absolutely gutted. I think he'll bounce back and put it behind him once he gets back on track. But I bet he was hurting after the race.
Alrighty, and then obviously Julian not able to defend against the two Ferrari drivers who were on obviously quicker tyres, but what hurt him the most, I think, was the wing damage. How annoyed do you think Julian will be? Obviously, such a clean battle with Blizzard, but the smallest of touches led to ultimately what cost him the race win.
Yeah, I think Julian felt that maybe some of Blizzard's defending was a little bit too extreme, perhaps. I think he's taken a couple of them to the stewards, although not actually the incident where he got his wing damage. I think that was just a simple mistake from Blizzard. Lost the rear of the car, and Julian had nowhere to go and made contact. So on that regard, he's just plain unlucky. But I think the majority of the battling was hard and fair, and they'd both enjoyed it up until it all went wrong, obviously, in those last few laps.
Yeah, so Ferrari 1-2. Good day for Ferrari. Out of their 6 drivers, 5 of them finished on the podium across the 3 tiers. So team bosses there will be happy. Julian finishes on the podium again in the prestige tier. Because of that puncture from Odems, you got Scooter Seb took a point. LMC Boogster, obviously his first race in the prestige tier, moved up from the pinnacle and didn't attend last week. Quiet one from him, but from 17th on the grid to 9th, do you think he'll be happy? Good start for him?
Yeah, I think he's got to be happy with that. He's made up lots of positions from being towards the back of the grid. I don't think he'd have been happy with his qualifying, that's for sure. But he's got in the top 10. As we said, we didn't really see him much on stream, to be honest. But he just worked his way forward, didn't he? And yeah, top 10 points first time out, and he'll be looking to build on that from there.
Definitely. James Slater as well finished 6 positions up from 18th. He's always there, isn't he, Jono? He's always there in that top kind of 6. No matter how quick drivers you put in the top tier with him, he'll always sneak into that kind of top 6, top 5 range.
Yeah, he always just makes his way forward. Again, somebody who didn't see that much during the race, but he just worked his way forward from towards the back. And throughout the tiers, though, we saw quite a mix-up from qualifying to the end of the race, and I think that's because of how powerful the soft to medium strategy was. It just gave them a big advantage towards the end of the race, and we saw lots of positions being gained from drivers who qualified outside the top 10.
Definitely, and of course you got LMC Hamilton who did get that jump off the line, moving all the way from last place, 19th to 7th position. So another big climber. But Jono, been an interesting race in Bahrain in terms of strategy, and now we move on to China next week. Not one of your favorite tracks personally, but I imagine after that one, all the drivers, commentators, and fans will be looking forward to seeing how these drivers perform for us in China next week.
Yeah, everyone will be looking forward to it. I think it's always a good track for the spectator to watch, and I'm sure we'll see some good action on stream. And I think Bahrain has also shown us just how important tyre wear and tyre strategy is. And we know that China is super tough on the front tyres. So managing those and getting the right strategy could make all the difference.
Alrighty, so before we leave it there, does anyone watching have any questions for myself and Jono before we go? Obviously, this is episode 4 of the Late Night Talk Show, and we will try and get some drivers in, Jono, but when they keep giving us these races where we've got so much to talk about, it's hard to fit it in within 30 minutes. We've run over again this week.
Yeah, we've run over again. We'll have to get some drivers in once and if we ever get a slightly quieter race weekend, but at the moment, every single tier is giving us plenty to talk about, and yeah, half an hour is just not enough time.
It definitely isn't, but we don't have to wait long before we see everyone back out on track. So the podium tier next week at 7 p.m. on Friday. Again, on Friday, the pinnacle tier at 8 p.m. and the prestige tier at 9 p.m. Jono, they want some more predictions from us.
Oh, no.
Come on, let's give them one for each tier, a race winner.
You go first this time. I went first last week, so
Are
see
you
if luck comes my way.
gonna copy me? Yeah.
Of course not.
Also, Gaza wants to know: do you think we'll see a safety car for China? I think it is possible. You know, more grass on the outside of the track can always cause, particularly that coming onto the back straight. If you run wide, you could be in the wall, as I'm sure some of our returning drivers know. But yeah, it is possible safety car. We have seen it there in previous seasons.
Yeah, we have. Wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, there is runoff around most of the circuit, so often the cars do end up off the racing line if there's a crash. But we do see people losing the car out of the final corner on that curb on the right-hand side and ended up in the wall over on the left. If that happens, we could well see safety car.
Alrighty, so my predictions, podium tier, I think I'm going to have to, because he deserves it, I'm going to give, I think Liam's going to win. in China. I think he deserves a nice comeback victory, so I'll go with him. I'm gonna back my main man Reflo up for the pinnacle tier. It's not that I don't like any other drivers. I just think he's driving like how Hamilton drives in his Mercedes. You know, he'll put it on pole, control the race, does everything he needs to do. You know, the way he picked his way through the field when he saw the Ferraris get, you know, through first and were taking off, and he was just able to just get the job done. So yeah, I'm going to go Reflo to make a hat trick. I don't think it'll be easy though. I think he'll really have to work for it. And then for the prestige tier, Julian, he had such good pace, so quick on qualifying night. Surely he's got to take a win. Let's go for him in China.
Okay, fair shout. Well, it's tough. It's tough to choose. In podium tier, I'm gonna go with Jamie to win next time out. I just think he's got good pace. The luck has to come his way eventually, and he's working hard. I know to try and get there. I know he's waiting on the podium, but I think the win will come along with it. So I'm going to go for Jamie in the podium tier. I'll stick with Sam for another week in the pinnacle tier because he was closer again to reflow this week, and I think if the Ferraris work well together, then they could take the challenge to the front. And in the prestige tier, I'll go with Blizzard just because I think he had great pace, amazing qualifying lap, and obviously if you qualify in pole, you're in prime position to win. So I'm going to go for him next time out.
Alrighty, well, thank you all to everyone for tuning, and best of luck to all our drivers. Enjoy to all the commentators next week again, and we will be back next Sunday with another episode of the Late Night Talk Show, episode number 5, and hopefully we have just as exciting races to talk about. Jono, thanks for joining me, and thank you to everyone for joining in. We will see you next week.